and also the hiring of a sniper to fill their house with bullets, not to kill, but to scare. Well, most of the time, the goal was not to kill until it eventually changed. I think he saw that they weren't going to be scared out of town. So Mr. Watts actually did try to hire someone to accidentally run the pastor over with his car, right? It's unbelievable, but it happened. But that didn't happen. The person either never accepted the offer or never went through with it. Ultimately, tragedy came when another individual opened fire on a pastor and his wife. The wife died. The pastor was permanently disabled in the incident and suffered horrible symptoms of PTSD and died only a few short years later from heart issues. So at 14 years of age, the author of this book, Rebecca, is orphaned, living with her aunt. Her mother having been mortally shot, and her father dying a few years later from all of the issues related. Pastor Nichols and his wife, through all this, the reign of terror and all this, they practiced and taught radical forgiveness. They constantly prayed for Mr. Watts, knowing what he was doing. And you could argue all day about maybe they should have moved out of town. But when their kids were scared, and what's going to happen tomorrow, and they would quote scripture about God's protection and on. And so they just taught their kids forever to turn the other cheek, forgive, all this stuff, right? And so at 14 years of age, shortly after her father died, Rebecca receives a phone call, an ominous phone call from Mr. Watts. So crazy. The person who shot her mother went to prison. Mr. Watts eventually went to prison too. But at 14, he calls her and he's out of prison. And she's like, immediately, already? How are you already out of prison after doing all this to me and my family? She didn't say that to him. He calls her saying about his spiritual experience with Jesus in prison and begging her for forgiveness. Now, I don't know if his experience with Jesus in prison was authentic or not. That's not for me to judge. But he's begging her for forgiveness, which, what would you do? 14 years of age. By the way, the audacity as a fully grown man to call a 14-year-old begging for forgiveness, that is in and of itself not forgivable, but she forgave him anyway. In fact, what she told him, Mr. Watts, I already have forgiven you. Long before this phone call, long before all this, long before you ever asked me, I've forgiven you. I had to, right, for my own good. I have already forgiven you, she said. The challenge today for each one of us is to extend radical forgiveness. And communion is the time, the perfect time for reconciliation. If you have internal bitterness towards someone and that someone doesn't know about it, don't go tell them. Just forgive them in your heart between you and God, right? Pray for them and forgive them between you and God. If there's tension between you and someone else and they know it, well, then you go to that person. You confess your part, even if you feel like you're only 10% in the wrong and they're 90% in the wrong. You ask for forgiveness and you forgive. If you've been abused, don't go talk to that person. But again, prayerfully in your heart, talk to God about the steps for forgiveness. If there's someone here today that you have bitterness toward, or that they've wronged you or you've wronged them, talk to them. Try to catch them before or during foot washing. If they're the same gender as you, try to wash their feet. If not, talk to them as soon as possible. Extend forgiveness, radical forgiveness today, just as Jesus has extended to us. And let's separate now for a foot washing time. Ladies in the back, men in the other room, and couples can go in the Sabbath school room.